And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon, and today I am talking with David Fisher. David, hey man, thanks for squeezing me in, man.
Hey, anytime. I'll squeeze it in just for you, Mike.
That's right. I appreciate that.
No worries.
Well, David is he's a professional speaker. He's a coach to business owners. He helps people develop leadership skills, communication skills, productivity within your workforce. David can really help you. I love this. Expand your impact through storytelling and vulnerability. Two of the things I talk about a lot, David, to my audience.
Nice. Yes.
Because we know that
Very
your
good.
story can make an impact on the lives of other people if we know how to tell it. And David, that's what you help people do. So, man, tell me, give us a snapshot of, I guess, who you are and how in the world did you get doing this? And then I've got a few other questions just to dive into, but how'd you get here?
Awesome. Well, I'll give you the short version, right? It's kind of like the Marvel universe, right? You keep adding movies. It feels like this could just keep going on forever, but I'll keep it short. But I grew up with a degree in communications, and I have a sales leadership management training background, but I was also pursuing an acting career. And got into the Screen Actors Guild and moved to Vancouver. I'm Canadian and I grew up in the States though.
Okay.
And my mom retired, moved back here to Vancouver. And then I was like, let's all go. So we took the family back up to Vancouver and I was going to continue to pursue acting. I had a job lined up in that industry, but working in kind of the marketing, sales and training background that I had. This is perfect. It's going to set up beautifully. And you know, like, have you ever done dominoes where you stack dominoes and you're almost at the end and you knock something or the cat or whatever, and and you're like, no, right? That's exactly what happened to me. So the bonus I had from the job I was leaving fell through. The job I had fell through, and the politics here had killed the movie industry because they weren't giving tax incentives anymore. So the movie people were just going elsewhere.
They were moving.
Yeah, exactly. So I was moving in, they were moving out. So I had no job, no bonus, no prospects, no acting, no nothing. And it was just, everything just fell completely apart. And I kind of had this is not my fault attitude. And was, which, was legitimate, I felt, right?
Right.
But I got to the point where I lost my car. Lost all my investments and lost everything. And the family, obviously we were struggling. My mom was helping me. And, when you search through couch cushions or whatever, and you're like, oh, I found a quarter, we were doing that. I'm like, oh, I found a loonie, which is like a $2 coin in Canada. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can take transit. I don't have to walk to an interview, or I don't need to, we can maybe go buy French fries, hey, let's go out to eat today, kids. I mean, it was that bad. And the thing of losing everything, the most critical thing that I lost was my confidence. Is this it? Is it over?
That's great.
And I was walking down the sidewalk, and it's in fact I have it right here, which is convenient. But I was walking by a homeless guy, and he had a red cup like this, the kind you see in university parties, and he's holding it out for money. Of course, I had nothing to give him, but I legitimately, for the first time in my life, I thought, is that my future? Is that where I'm going? Am I going to be sitting here? Please help me. My kids need money. My kids need food. And I kind of shocked myself thinking that, but it was a legitimate fear that I had. And where you have a thought and then it takes you like an hour to explain the thought to somebody else.
Yeah.
I won't do that today to you, but
we'll come back for the next episode.
Right, exactly. Because stay tuned, like the MCU. But the next thought was nobody's coming. It doesn't matter if it's your fault or not. Nobody's going to be your hero. You have to be your own hero. And I had no idea what the next step was going to be, but I went home and I Googled on YouTube. I just went and I just said motivational speaking, and I just watched speaker after speaker after moment, and I wept for like a week. It was my full-time job, just watching and weeping and changing myself and thinking, it doesn't matter if it's my fault. I have a responsibility to react to the situation that's been given me, and how do I rise above it? And then I was able to get involved and meet some business people and get a really low-paying part-time job, but that gave me work history in Canada, and I was able to work my own. A few years later, I was making six figures at a job, but and pulled myself out, and most importantly, got my confidence back. But it also reframed where I wanted to go with my life. And I love acting, and I was selling software and making a lot of money, and I had a friend of mine say, yeah, but your soul is dying. And I'm like, I hate you. So it's like, thanks for filling me out. Yeah, I know, like, come on, man, I was happy. But it really helped me evaluate where I wanted to go with my life and make a difference and make an impact. And I'd always done speaking with an acting background and also a speaking background. I thought, how can I legitimately turn this into something? And then that was the birth of what was Kingfisher Communications, which enabled me to become an international speaker and a top 10 speaking coach, according to Yahoo Finance. But I really feel like there's a purpose now behind it. And the focus on that is, yes, there's communication strategy, but to really focus in on the storytelling, like you said, and the vulnerability. And I'm actually starting a whole new program probably end of January, like it's on track, called Amplify Your Story, which is going to be an online program to help businesses and people who want to make a difference, who want to reach out and care about others and care about the planet we live on, regardless of your business and what you want to do with it. How do I expand my influence through my story and my vulnerability? How do I do that? So it's all getting systematized. This has been kind of an ongoing thing, but I'm really excited about the future, especially when I look into the past and realize, where I've come
from where I've come. Yeah, dude, you have just hit on a bunch of grenades that I just want to camp on. Good. You speak of my language, right? He said systems in there. Everybody who listens to me understands I'm big on systems, right? So I love that. But the vulnerability that you just shared, right? What it did, David, is it bonded me with you.
Yes.
And now, guess what? The next time I see one of those homeless guys with his sign or his cup, guess who's coming to my mind? You are, right?
Exactly.
Because and business owners can do that. We help business owners do that through the creation of their book. We call it brand strategy. Right. It's not logos and colors. It's what's unique to you. What is your story that we can communicate through a book? Anybody can do that because they all have a story, right?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And I was working with a client, a corporate client, I won't reveal their name, but a corporate client. And the first thing, the most popular website page on a particular website is after you go to the homepage is the About Us page. And I was looking at their About Us page, and they talked about features and benefits and never heard their story. Looked up at one of their competitors, and there was like, we started in the living room and we saw their story. And I said, guys, look, like, what's your story? No wonder you're losing business to this other company, because they have a story, and your story is, here's what we do, and we give a satisfaction guarantee. Those are great, do those, but we don't know who you are.
That's right. Yeah. And I keep telling people are going to buy you more for who you are than what you do. Absolutely. The importance of telling the story. And I know you've met them. I have them all the time. Clients who say, yeah, but my story's boring. It's like, no, it's boring to you.
Yes.
Tell me, we'll make it exciting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I had a guy I was coaching, and he's a friend of mine, very successful, multimillionaire, international business. And he got kidnapped in Nicaragua. He was vice president of a company at the time, kidnapped in Nicaragua and held at gunpoint for ransom. And he said several hours later, he'd contacted his company and they actually paid the ransom and he was let go. 2 days later, we're having a drink and I'm like, please share some stories in your speeches. And he said, I don't have any stories. And I'm like,
dude, let me give you one.
Yeah, right. I know. I'm like, come on. I was throwing my drink in his face, but I'm just kidding. But one of the things that I share is we either have extraordinary stories like that people are wowed by and they want to hear it and go, oh, tell me more. But we also have the ordinary stories that all of us can relate to. All of us can relate to running late to the airport. All of us can relate to the loss of a loved one, or a kid that gets lost in the mall and that fear that we have when they disappear, right? All of us have these, because we all have the same emotions. We have emotions of fear and happiness and anxiety and what keeps us awake at night and what wakes us up excited. And because of that, when we share a simple story, like, have you ever had a story when you wake up in the morning and you're running late and you can't find your left shoe? And all of us go, oh my gosh, yeah, I've been there. Maybe we can't find our left shoe, but we can't find our socks or our contacts or our wallet or whatever. And that anxiety of being late, we share that story that connects us with other people. Absolutely. And so that's one of the things that I teach is how do we pull out these mundane stories that nobody had, that they think is boring, but other people go, please tell me more. And inside they're thinking, why? I'm boring. I'm like, no, you're not. You're a vibrant, passionate, interesting person.
Yeah. And it's so good because we have a free program that helps people who want to create brand strategy in their own book to do it on their own if they don't want to hire me, right? And I had a guy reach out who's in that program, and he reached out. He says, Michael, I'm struggling with my brand strategy. I've gone through your process. I just can't get there. So I met with him online for about 35 minutes, David. And I read his answers, right? And through our conversation, I'm like, here's your story. Here's your brand. This is what you need to keep. He was so close to it, he couldn't see it, right? Business owners need somebody like you from the outside to go, oh, no,
Absolutely.
Here's your story. Here's how you should tell it. Talk to a financial advisor, an attorney, a car shop owner, right? They all have stories. How do you help them discover that and then tell it?
Great question. And I was actually meeting with an entrepreneur who was starting a new business in Vancouver. And this was kind of an aha moment for me because I was really struggling. I kept asking a lot of questions and I kept going back and staying on surface level kind of stuff and not really willing to, which I understand, like vulnerable. I wasn't asking him to share all the secrets in his closet. It was just trying to get a little bit of information behind the scenes. And sometimes that's a little bit hard. And so I'd share a little bit about me and then just a tiny bit. And I'm like, come on, I felt like I was trying to break through the wall. And finally I got to his kids and he lit up. He goes, this is why I'm doing it, for my kids. I want my kids to have a better future. And he went on, it was, it was, it was a sustainable company. And he was cared about the world, but he also cared about his financial security for his kids and all of this. And I'm like, that's it. There's the story. And it's through his children. But what I saw, and looking back on it, I'm like, that was the trigger. Where before he's a relatively stoic individual, which was totally great. But he was like this, yes, and this is one.
Yes.
Business, and I'm really struggling with finances right now. And he gets to the kids and he goes, that's what's important. And something lit up in him. And it was the nonverbals that gave me a clue that that's where the story came from. And then I was able to have that conversation and ask subsequent questions. What are your kids? What are the dreams? What do you talk about? What are your vacations like? And then out of that, we began to pull out a story.
That's great. That is so good. And you're like me, David, in a lot of ways. I'm finding is that if I cut your arms off, you go mute.
Yeah. Right. I know. Right. Yeah.
I speak like, but so I was on your website. It's davidfish.ca because he's in Canada, right? It's awesome. Go check him out. But I saw you moving in things in your presentations. I use video a lot I use Loom a lot. I use Zoom a lot because I communicate this way. And I try to tell my clients, when you do video, be you, tell your story. Don't say, hi, I am David and I am, who cares?
Right.
Resonate with your story. And I lead with my story most of the time because it compels people to listen and they remember the story.
Yeah, really good point. And they did a study, the scienceofpeople.com, Vanessa Van Edwards, she's one of the people I always get information from, content from. And she did an exhaustive study on TED speeches and what makes a speech get 1 million views as opposed to 100,000, which is great, but it's 10% of 1 million, right? If I did my math right. So it's what is the difference? And the only determining factor that they felt was a difference between many views and relatively few views, considering it's TED, was how many gestures per minute they used. People are attracted to movement because historically movement caught our attention. It could have been food or we could be food. And so movement, do we run? Movement, do we hunt? Movement from, a stranger are you a friendly? Is it a friendly movement? Is it an unfriendly movement? And so when we use our hands to talk, it speaks to that part of our brain that is attracted to movement. And if you see animals and stuff, when something moves, they're like, what was that? Like my dog, is walking along, there's a rustle in the bushes and what is that? Right. We're like that. Yeah, totally. And so when we use our hands in neutral, friendly gestures, that attracts the audience to go, oh, tell me more. And you can actually make a mundane story exciting with the voice and with the movement, with the gestures. So you using gestures, spot on. All
the time. And especially, I'm a big fan of email marketing, right? Because it's a way I've used email to build relationships through words. Nice. Multiply that now with telling your story that way or inserting a video, which we'll do many times, where it just helps me communicate in such a different way. In business and marketing, how do you help a business owner build this within his own business, but also communicate with teams to build up his teams by telling their story, to build, I guess, culture within his company, right? To say, this is what we're about.
Yeah, oh, it's so good, and there's an extra challenge too working remote, and so you're missing that
Oh,
connection. You have that,
yes.
like, you and I can kind of mimic eye contact by
Right.
looking at the camera and looking at the screen. In
Yes.
real life, we could just look eyeball to eyeball, but here we have to kind of fake it a little bit. So,
Yeah.
so most of the time, a lot of managers are just like staring at themselves on the screen. People, not just managers, right? And
Yeah.
then so there's no actual eye contact that takes place. So we have to kind of fake it a little bit.
Yes.
But usually what I tell people is make that effort to make that connection. But then it's okay if you're a manager, a boss, supervisor, business owner, to reveal a little bit of struggle. Now you don't want it to be like, oh my gosh, this is horrible, I don't know what I'm going to do, right?
Yeah.
You want to have a solution, or you
Yeah.
want to say, this is what happened to us last year, but here's how we came out of it. Here's some of the strategies that we use. Now we're in a pandemic, here's some things that we can do.
Yeah.
But a tiny bit of strategic vulnerability can help people open up to you as well. If they believe in you as a leader and know that you're not just putting up a front, but they see a little bit of who you are, then they're willing to follow that. And they're also willing to say, okay, well, good. Now I'm free maybe to share a little bit as well. And then that creates a community. There's a whole bunch of things to go with that, and how you can do that. But that's kind of the key to it.
Yeah. And you, and the story I always share around that, John Maxwell, John Maxwell,
Yes.
the motivational, right? Well, years ago, he was a preacher, right? He was a pastor
right.
out in California.
Right.
And that's where he got his start and everything. And he was at some conference. He was the last speaker of this whole event. And after, speaker after speaker, just rah. And somebody pulled him aside and said, John, these pastors out here, they're depressed because everybody on stage is like a superstar and they suck. And John took his entire presentation, threw it away, got a notebook, pen, 10 biggest mistakes he'd ever made as a pastor, and sat down on a chair and said, here are the mistakes I've made. And he said it was the thing that bonded everybody to him because they could relate.
Brilliant.
He was vulnerable. As business owners, too many times we're not vulnerable. Everybody has to think, I've got it all together and I've got all the answers and I'm going to go.
It's totally. I know people who they'll go rent a Ferrari and take a selfie and be like, living the dream. And I'm like, no, you're not. You live the dream for 14 seconds, right? Yeah. Exactly. Right.
It's just chill out.
Yeah.
But it's the vulnerability, the being real, of letting me know who you really are. That bonds me.
Yeah, it does. And it's totally okay to say, we're in a struggle, but we're going to get through this.
Yeah.
Let's figure it out. I need your help. I need your input. Here's what I'm thinking, right? That creates people want to follow that.
Absolutely.
As opposed to, being the emperor that's high above everybody else.
Well, I have all of the answers, David. You should come talk to me. Right. And
right,
honestly,
exactly.
that's where I was for a few years. I was trying to be somebody else and all that. And it finally hit me. It's like, you know what? I'm a marketing guy. I love marketing.
Nice.
But David, I don't know if you know this. I pay 2 marketing coaches to look at my business.
Yes.
Because I'm too close to it to see it. But
totally.
Everybody, for the longest time, I wouldn't reveal that because, I'm the marketing guy. I should be able to figure this out. Not for my own company. Yeah. And when I did that, people started going, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Oh, exactly. I mean, I have speech, and I get so annoyed, because I'll have speech coaches and people like that. And I'm like, really? Come on, man. I thought that was really cool. And they're like, no, it didn't land. And I'm like, fine. Right. Let's do it again. But I mean, the best coaches, best athletes have coaches, right? Best actors have coaches, right? Because you're right. You're so right. We can't see it when it's in front of us because we're thinking of all the little details, or we see the big picture, but we miss the details. We go to point A to point C and everybody else is going, I don't know how you got there, right? Where's point B? And so when you have somebody on the outside looking in and kind of helping you with that, then you can go, okay, great, help me problem solve this. And it's a huge asset. I know when I started doing that more and more and bringing on more and more coaches and outside people to look at it's just not only did my network explode, but my knowledge and my insight into how I delivered and told stories kind of exploded to go, I can learn so much. You kind of realize I know nothing. What am I doing? Right. But it's in a motivational kind of way. Absolutely.
And you've probably experienced the same thing I have. When you hire coaches, which they're usually not cheap, right? Your business actually grows. And it's just like, well, that doesn't make sense. But what happens is they can see something and give you one directional change or something that makes all the difference. You're now growing. You've got a network of people. So I'm a big proponent of coaches. I know you do some coaching and you're starting this new program. Let's unpack that a little bit as we're starting to wind up. but I want to know how can my audience connect with you? What kind of help could you give a brick and mortar US based business owner to help them make a larger impact, understand vulnerability, telling their story? What are some things they could connect with you on, and where would they go to get that?
Great point. Yeah, excellent. And right now, amplifyyourstory.ca is not live. It will be soon. So you can still go to davidfish.ca, and you can actually just I have a sign up page, and you can write in Amplify Your Story, and I'll know what you're talking about, and I'll get you more information as that, because it's just in this Genesis. Like, I have all the content, it's just not there yet.
Yeah.
But it's like this will kind of go through sort of a few different stages. Like, the first stage is what's a story you're telling yourself. Maybe you're telling yourself, I don't have a story. And so the first thing we do is pull out that to say, yes, you do. We just have to change the way you think about things.
Oh, that's great.
Then the next step is, how do you pull stories out of other people? Because you can, like you, Michael, asking really good questions and creating that connection and using like the eye contact and things. How do you do that to create that connection? So when somebody leaves, they're like, oh man, I really like that person. Like, I want to keep I want to keep talking to them. I mean, maybe there's not a financial relationship, but maybe there's a partnership or some sort of maybe you have a fan. If you've got a fan, that means you get referrals.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? And then how do you tell your own story? And then how do you find the points that create that commonality so that you can see a future together? And so that's what Amplify Your Story is going to kind of walk you through those steps. So that people leave, they're like, we have two stories, and now we're merging them into one story, like a friendship or a relationship or something, where there's some crossover, but now you have that really deep connection with somebody else. And the depth of that can vary depending on the type of relationship. There's baristas when I go get my coffee it's a 2-second conversation, but there's a connection there that's beyond thank you and you leave, because I made the intention to make a little bit more of a connection than just what we usually do when we're just automatic.
Absolutely, man. Gold. I hope people reach out and connect with you on Amplify Your Story. And here's what I took out of that, because I'm an introvert, believe it or not. I hate going to networking events and all that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I never know how to connect. So one of my coaches gave me something. He's like, well, here, every time I go somewhere, I use the acronym FORD, like not the car, Ford. Yeah. I can always ask somebody about, what's your family? Tell me about your family, your occupation. What do you do for fun? What's your recreational activities? Yes. And what are your dreams? So those forward, I carry that with me everywhere I go. So now I can start engaging and getting somebody else's story, and then they usually reciprocate. Now we just connect the dots. So that has worked for me, but it took me years and a coach to help me figure that out.
Totally.
I'm just not that smart. So
I get it. Yeah. And I'll also ask, one of the things that I also coach into is, how do you end those conversations? Because I'm stuck with the guy in the corner that keeps complaining about things. Like, how do you break away? But also then, how do you set goals? If you're an introvert, maybe it's just, I want to have one meaningful conversation and I've set my goal, where everybody else you feel like is talking to 40 different people and their business is exploding. You're like, I'm so depressed, I can't talk to anybody. Just set a simple goal. I'm going to talk to one person, do forward, learn how to the end of a conversation. I had a successful night.
Yep, and I'm out of there now.
Yeah, and I'm out. Great.
Yeah, it's funny because I always look for the other guy in that room who's just kind of meandering like I do. It's like, hey, David, I'm Michael.
Totally.
We both don't want to be here. Let's talk.
Right, totally.
And it's great. All right, we're gonna have to revisit some things in another episode, because you hit some things that were really cool, but the vulnerability and the storytelling is so critical, and business owners just don't innately know how to do that. So David, I'm glad that you're here. Thank you for being here, because it really is helpful in not only the confidence of you being able to know your story and communicate it, but from a business perspective, being able to put that into your marketing message. It separates you from all of your competitors because they can't tell your story.
Exactly.
And so I want people to check out your website, davidfish.ca, because you're in Canada, and check out amplifyyourstory.ca, because this is going to air in probably February of next year.
Yeah, end of January, Amplify Your Story will be live. Good. And so, that'll be ready to go. But reach me before then. I'll be really nice to you. I'll get you a discount, all that good stuff. If you reach me before, Amplify Your Story, davidfish.ca, and I'll make sure you take care of it.
That's awesome. David, man, thank you for being here. This has been really, really good, insightful. thanks for helping people understand their story and be able to harness that and use it so that they really can make an impact in people's lives, whether they're the barista or an international speaker like you or anywhere in between. We all have a story to tell. And I'm glad that there's somebody out there who echoes what I tell them all the time. You've got a process to help people do it. So davidfish.ca. David, thank you for being here. I really enjoyed being together.
Me too. Love it. We'll do it again.